Chapter 2 Welcome Home. Will spent another night at the hospital. Overall, he felt pretty good, especially considering he survived a fatal car crash. He discovered a new ache with every move, but these sores didn't require much medical expertise, beyond a steady regime of vicodin. Part of the reason he stayed had nothing to do with his injuries. It was simple. Barbason needed time to prepare his home for a new resident. Since he had no family or friends close enough to visit, it was a boring night. Eventually, Will asked the nurse if she would find him a book of Sudoku puzzles. Will loved Sudoku. It started out as curiosity. Every so often, he heard it mentioned at school, and caught glimpses of other kids filling out these strange number puzzles. Finally, he looked it up online, read the rules, and tried a few practice puzzles on his computer. It was frustrating at first, but before long, Will was hooked. The nurse returned with a puzzle book from the gift shop. After flipping through the crosswords and word searches, neither of which interested him in the slightest, Will found the familiar 9x9 grid of a Sudoku puzzle. He got more relief completing his first row of numbers than from a whole night's worth of medication. Finally, Will slept. Around 1 o'clock the next day, Barbason returned. Once all the release papers were signed, he led Will to his old, faded blue pickup truck. It protested when Barbason turned the key, but a slap to the dashboard, plus a mumbled obscenity, got the engine started. They drove down I-43 South, the same highway that recently claimed 2 lives. Although the sky was clear today, Will still felt queasy as they passed that section of road. He held his breath until he was certain no dark shadow was waiting to finish the job. Will gave his great-uncle directions to his house, but otherwise the ride was silent. When Will's house came into view, he had to fight back tears. Knowing his deserted home would be a cruel reality check, Will slipped back into numbness. He refused to think about his parents, or acknowledge their deaths. If he could just do that long enough to pack, Will thought he would be okay. The truck gave a mechanical sigh as it parked. Barbason climbed down, inhibited by his bad leg. "I threw 2 suitcases in the back," he told Will. "There ain't gonna be room for no more than that anyhow. Whatever don't fit, well, we can sell or get ye one of those storage unit things." The suitcases looked older than the truck. They each carried one up to the house, but Barbason waited outside while Will packed. It was easier than Will expected to walk through his home. It looked just like they left it. Traces of his mom's cooking lingered in the air. Mail was still spread on the table, to be sorted later. The thought that this house was no longer a home seemed silly when surrounded by the subtle signs of family life. All the same, Will packed. It felt like getting ready for a vacation, although he knew better. This was no vacation, and he wouldn't be returning anytime soon. Chances are, this would be the last time he saw this place. But if it didn't feel like goodbye, fine. Will was going to ride this delusion until his work here was done. There'd be time to deal with his feelings later. He packed a few sets of clothes, but decided not to waste much space on them. He could always buy more. Will selected only his favorite books from his bookshelf. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, The Island of Dr. Moreau, Frankenstein, and Stranger in a Strange Land made the cut. As far as Will was concerned, it was classic science fiction or nothing at all. The only non-fiction book he packed was a pocket-sized book filled with Sudoku puzzles. It had hundreds of puzzles, half of them completed. Will gathered his laptop and accessories in their travel bag, then grabbed the family photo album and a few pictures off the mantel. Once the suitcases were full, Will took a final look through the house. There wasn't room for anything else, but it felt like he was missing something. He was randomly looking through drawers when something bright caught his eye. He picked it up. It was a silver watch, still shining like new. Will's mother gave it to him last Christmas. It looked new because he only wore it once or twice. At the time, the watch meant nothing to him, but now it was a treasure, like a gift left from the grave. Suitcases in hand, watch on wrist, Will left the home of his childhood. Barbason helped hoist the suitcases into the bed of his truck. "You ready?" the old man asked. Will didn't look back. He knew if he did, he would fall apart. With more of a quiver than he hoped, he said, "Yeah, I guess so." They got into the truck, and the Lewis house faded into the past. The 40-minute drive from Beloit to Elkhorn was awkward. Really awkward. Neither Will nor his great-uncle had any idea what to say to each other. Whenever either of them tried to start a conversation, it was promptly followed by a short response and a long silence. By the time they passed Delavan, Elkhorn, 6 miles ahead, Will gave up on the idea of chit-chat. They took the exit off I-43, jumped on County Road NN, then turned down Bray Road. It was a scenic country road filled with hills, curves, woods, and cornfields along the way. It was easy to be distracted. This road had an almost otherworldly feel to it. At the end of Bray Road, looming like a gargoyle over the intersection, was B.R. Amen & Sons, Inc. Although Will had never been there, he knew its general history. Technically, Uncle Barbason should be Barbason Jr. Will's great-grandfather, the original Barbason Re Amen, started the construction business back in the 40s. He hoped to pass it along to his 2 sons, but Connor's goals led him to the field of medicine instead of construction. As far as Will knew, Barbason Jr. worked there his whole life. Whatever it was like in the past, now B.R. Amen was a ghost of its former self. The white brick building rested atop a hill, with its paint peeling and name fading away. The huge garage doors, which took up most of the front, were shut tight. Barbason parked the truck, which seemed to give a groan of relief, and led Will around the side of the garage. A small white addition was partially concealed from the road, and the mailbox hinted that this was where Barbason lived. The old man unlocked the door, and they dragged the suitcases inside. Barbason threw his jacket onto a coat hanger with the blind ease of daily routine. Will got a tour, but it didn't take long. They entered into a living room with splintered wood floors, a legless plaid couch that sat on the floor and sunk in the middle, and an ancient moth-eaten easy chair. The seats were facing an antique television. With a quick glance at its condition, Will suspected the television was nearing the end of its days. Beyond the living area was a cramped kitchen, complete with a patio table and chairs shoved into the corner to serve as a dining room. Next, they went down a claustrophobic hallway next to the kitchen. "Bathroom," Barbason mumbled as they passed the first door to the left. "The hot water don't keep, so you gotta take a shower fast or take it cold. My room's at the end of the hall, and up to the left just goes to the garage." He stopped at the next door, to their right. "This'll be your room, kid. I cleared it out this morning." They hauled the suitcases into Will's new room. It was a small, barren space that smelled like old dust recently disturbed. It was empty, aside from a little desk, a bedside table, and a rickety bunk bed, not to mention thick cobwebs in each corner. Once, on a dare, Will took a flashlight and looked into a mausoleum. The overall impression of this room was about the same. Used to be my room back when me and Connor were kids, said Barbason. There was no distinguishable emotion in his voice, just simple, matter-of-fact recollection. Top bunk used to be me, but I'd do the bottom if I were you. That thing's been asking to fall apart for years. Will set down his suitcases and sat experimentally on the bed. He thought he might prefer the sleeping quarters at the mausoleum. Thanks, he said. The old man hesitated, opened his mouth to speak, then decided against it. He limped through the door without a word. Suddenly, in the stillness of that deserted room, reality hit. Will thought it sunk in back at the hospital, but it wasn't until he had to call a new place home that everything came into perspective. My parents are dead, he repeated in his mind. My old life is gone now. Gone forever. He turned over, grabbed his moldy pillow, and cried. A new life was about to begin, and Will didn't think he was going to like it very much.